Hi, everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm your host, Stan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicapper Mike Beer and I will take a look at two major Breeders' Cup prep races at Keeneland on opening weekend, the Saturday race of the day, the Keeneland Turf Mile, and the First Lady Stakes for fillies and mares. David Aragona, Craig Milkowski from Timeform US. They'll take a special look at the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, a prep race for the Breeders' Cup Turf. That race, the Joe Hirsch at Belmont Park, plus Nicole Russo's Pedigree pick segment. We're all in line, so let's break Out of the Gate. Dan Ullman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Saturday, October the 9th, race number 10 at Keeneland. Let's throw up the field for the Grade 1, $750,000 Keeneland Turf Mile, an important prep perhaps for the Breeders' Cup Mile. You can download free formulator past performances on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. Access them, handicap along with us. We have a Breeders' Cup Mile winner in the field, Mike. That's the 10 Order of Australia, who returns to the scene of his shocking 73-1 win in last year's mile. He likes Keeneland, obviously.
Yeah, he ran well in that race. I guess you could say he's, maybe struggled a bit so far this year, Dan, back home. But boy, has he been running in some tough races over there. It feels like he's in a better spot here.
And he has tactical speed that worked to his advantage in last year's Breeders' Cup Mile. And as we throw up the Timeform US pace projector, you'll note that he can sit close to the pace. Now, some like it. Hot Brown has a lot of early speed. Brown Storm has a good amount of early speed. I think Tell Your Daddy's quick out of there. There's a chance that this pace could be solid to fast.
Yeah, I thought so too. We'll see how it plays out. Unfortunately for some like it, Hot Brown, who does have a lot of speed, he's got a tough post on the outside and he might have to send.
The number one front run, the Fed, a restricted stakes winner at this distance back in 2019 at Saratoga when trained by Chad Brown, was sold for $440,000 over the summer. 2 starts for this barn, both sprinting, both failed to hit the board. Maybe getting back to a mile helps?
I mean, maybe. We'll see. Personally, I've always preferred him going shorter, but things haven't worked out since the private purchase and the trainer change. We'll see if he can get back to one of his good races. It's not like he's, totally hopeless in here, Dan, and he can get the mile, but he's going to be a big price and he's probably going to need some help.
One of the 2 deep closers the Timeform US has notched for this race is the 2 Argentello, who I guess had a little bit of an excuse last time out in the Mint Million, simply because it was his first start since the Keeneland spring meeting. He did run well against allowance horses during the spring meet. He did also get a fast pace in that Mint Million, and he came with a run late, but no match for Pixelate. He must improve.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, I don't see the race that he's run so far that, makes him a real player in here. If you like him and you feel like there's some reason to expect him to improve in here, he's going to be a huge price.
The number 3, In Love, has won at Keeneland, and he's coming into this race in career form off 2 consecutive victories, including this performance in a division of the TVG Stakes, a restricted event at Kentucky Downs. Now, he popped a 99 Beyer speed figure in this race, Mike. Was it simply pace and trip aided? You see he gets a dream run along the inside.
Yeah, he got a perfect trip in this race right along the inside. He does finish this race off pretty well, Dan. I like the performance from him in here, and it certainly did feel like a step in the right direction for him. I don't know. Maybe he'll improve again. I really respect this trainer. This horse is another one who's going to be a good price in here. So if you really like him, and again, he did run well in this race, you can take a shot here.
If the pace is fast, you must respect the 4 Space Traveler, group winner overseas, now under the tutelage of Brendan Walsh. This will be his 3rd start for the Walsh barn. Let's go back last month to the Woodbine Mile, a race in which he got wired. Town Cruise in sharp form got to the lead in here. Space Traveler tries to get into it on the outside. He's going to eventually get up into 2nd. I thought it was a useful performance. He has competitive speed figures, and he might get the right setup.
He might. I liked him, obviously cutting back to the mile for this race. It felt like the right distance for him. I don't know how I just feel about the race overall, Dan. I don't know how I feel about the performance. He's, very game to get 2nd behind a front-running winner, but it just felt like a bunch of horses had the chance to be 2nd in there. He got it. I wasn't thrilled with it, but he does have some back class.
Speaking of front-running winners, Tell Your Daddy. Great job by Tom Morley. Claimed this horse for $40,000 earlier this year. Turned him into a graded stakes winner. We swing into the stretch of the Bernard Baruch, but let's note, This is only a 4-horse field, and Tell Your Daddy was able to control a mild pace throughout, sprints on home to win, 101 buyer, second consecutive triple-digit fig, but might not get the same scenario at Keeneland on Saturday.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be a lot different this time. Even the Lure 2 back when he ran the 100 buyer, Dan, that was another slow-paced race where he just sat up close and was second best. Not knocking the job Morley's done with him. Obviously, he's really improved this horse. Morley's on a great run in New York right now. We'll see if he can bring that down to Keeneland with him. This horse is, I guess he's a little bit of a sleeper in this race, Dan, but I prefer other horses, to be honest with you.
Layoff's the big question for the 6 Ivar because he's obviously good enough to win this race. He won this race last year. He also had a prep race going in, and he does not have the benefit of a prep race this year. After he won the Turf Mile last year, I thought he ran just fine in the Breeders' Cup Mile, beaten 2 lengths with an even performance. He made his comeback in a tough spot. That Turf Classic, not only from a class standpoint, he was in against, one of the best turf horses in the country in domestic spending, but also at a 1 1/8, which just seems a little bit far for him. He didn't run badly. Now he returns with blinkers. He's kind of an X factor in here.
Yeah, he is. I could use him at the right price. I don't know that I would, be thrilled to take the 5-1 morning line on him, considering the layoff. He did run pretty well the last time we saw him, though. I don't think that was a race he had a legitimate chance in, and he did come widest to the stretch in there. I thought he ran fine. His form from last year makes him a contender in here. I don't know how I feel about them putting the blinkers back on. And again, I could use him. I'd have to get the right price.
Pixelate, the number 7, very honest horse for Godolphin. Never have thought of him as a grade 1 type, but he got a big win last time out at Kentucky Downs in the Mint Million. He also got a very fast pace to run at. Let's watch Pixelate's stretch run at Kentucky Downs. They went fast early. You see him second from the left in the Godolphin Blue, and he's going to sweep by Some Like It Hot Brown, a horse that did a lot of work up front.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, not to take anything away from Pixelate, who's a real nice horse, very honest, and shows up every time. But Some Like It Hot Brown is the horse you want out of this race. This pace was fast and contested all the way around. He turned away the favorite in the stretch, and the closers all came. He run second. The closers won 1, 3, and 4. Pixelate ran a pretty nice race here, Dan, but he had all the best of it.
Number 8, Brown Storm, is a Group 2 winner in his native Chile. He has yet to win in North America. We saw the video where In Love won the division of the TVG. Brown Storm cut out a pretty solid pace in that race and finished a decent third. And his prior race was a throwout on dirt in the Grade 1 Gold Cup, going 1 1/4. When he uses his speed, he's capable of going fast. I'm just not sure if he's this type of horse.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I don't think the way that this race projects to play out on the front end, I don't think that helps this horse at all, Dan. I understand that he might be better going forward. I don't see how he's going to deal with a fast pace against this field.
I really don't know how Maker does it. He claimed Monarch's Glen for 62.5. I thought it was just all about over for this veteran. He's now come back. He won a stake at Indiana Grand, 3 back, stakes placed at West Virginia, and third in the Mint Million, the race we saw Pixelate win. But in the Mint Million, it was a race where he got the right setup. Give him a pace, he'll come with a run, maybe a piece at a price.
Right. You saw him in the same replay there that we just showed for Pixelate. This horse got a similar trip, sitting it out early, wide through the stretch, could not kick on with Pixelate. He did get along for third at the end, but he was really no factor in there with a good setup. And again, listen, I appreciate the job Maker's done with him, but I feel like it might be just more about placement, Dan, than it is about him really improving this horse.
Order for Australia. Let's watch his 73-1 shocking upset in the Breeders' Cup Mile, and it was shocking. He came into this race off 2 allowance victories overseas, one of them on synthetic. Maybe you want to question the overall quality of the Breeders' Cup Mile field last year, but he sat a good trip because he has tactical speed. He forged by when it counts. He is a Group 2 winner this year, but as you mentioned in the open mic, in his last 2 races, he has faced a couple of the better turf milers in Europe.
Yeah, he has. I mean, and even that field that we just watched in the Breeders' Cup, I get that maybe it wasn't a vintage Breeders' Cup Mile field, but it was still a good field and it was better than this one. And it was, surprising or not, he still ran the race that he ran to beat them all. I actually feel like his form this year is pretty good. I love his running style for this race. He has speed, but he doesn't need the lead. He's really been banging heads with some top milers over there, and I think he's been holding his own, Dan.
Thought his last race was very good. He broke very sharp, and then he allowed a pace setter, a runaway pace setter, to make the lead. He settled in a very loose pocket, and he was just no match for the odds-on winner, who's a very sharp horse, but he ran on for second, and he seems to be coming into this race the right way. Diamond Oops, the question for Diamond Oops is the mile. He was second in this race in 2019. He ran very well behind Longshot Bowie's Hero, but these connections have mostly concentrated on keeping him sprinting, whether dirt or turf. His last race at Kentucky Downs, the race will show you right now, their turf sprint at 3/4 was a good effort. First start off a 2.5-month layoff. He stayed close to the pace. He finishes second behind a horse that was dirtied up coming in, Gear Jockey, and the 8th horse would come back to run third in a graded with a 95. He's an honest horse. I'm not sure about the mile.
Yeah, I'm not either. He did run pretty well in this race. I like this performance. He's game only second best in here, but game to get it. And it felt like a step in the right direction for him. The mile is the question, as you've already mentioned. 2 years ago, he ran bang up in this race where they used his speed. He went forward, just got run down at the end, but that was a nice performance. If he can run something like that, he can get a piece of this.
Maker also has Field Pass in here, a multiple graded stakes winner. One of those graded wins came at Keeneland back in 2020. That was the Transylvania against fellow 3-year-olds. He found a great spot, and he got a great trip 2 starts back when winning a grade 3 at Pimlico. Last time out, just in too tough in the 4-star Dave.
Yeah, he was just in too tough in that race. They found the right spot for him, 2 back, to pick up another graded stakes win for him. I actually felt like each of his first 3 starts off the layoff, Dan, first 3 starts as a 4-year-old, I thought he ran fine in all of those races. They were all, pretty fast paces against very strong fields. I thought he ran pretty well. I've never been a huge fan of this horse, but I do think he's improved as a 4-year-old.
And I don't think anyone should sleep on the 13, Some Like It Hot Brown, because this is a very underrated New York bred trained by Maker. Graded stakes winner this year. 2 back in the Wise Dance, at a legitimate pace, run down late by a sharp horse and set piece. And we saw the Mint Million that Pixelate won. He did all of the dirty work. He was still punching on at the end. If he gets to the lead and gets loose, as Timeform US thinks there's a chance, he's going to be tough to run down.
Yeah, he is. His form is very good right now. Again, I really do think he's the horse you want out of that last race at Kentucky Downs. He did all the hard work up there, and I thought he just took a really tough beat at the end of that race. If he had a better post, Dan, I probably would have put him on top. I don't know how hard they're going to have to use him to clear from the outside, but I'm definitely using this horse, and I could have put him on top.
Top pick time for the Saturday race of the day. The Keeneland Turf Mile will go with last year's Breeders' Cup Mile winner, Order of Australia. He has the class. He has the tactical speed. Mike, you like Some Like It Hot Brown? I think they're just going to send him out there and hope for the best. He went fast last time and he held on. He might do it again.
Yeah, he might. I'm afraid of him. I really stayed towards the outside with my picks, Dan. I like 10 and 13 the most. I just feel like, as far as Order of Australia goes, I mean, this is a good field, but it's not, we've seen better editions of this race, to be sure. I just feel like they might have found the right spot for him once again.
I have a feeling Ivar is going to be ready to rumble off the layoff, and I think he might be the dangerous late thread in here. I'll go 10-6-5-4. Mike's going 10-13, 11-6. It's your Saturday race of the day, the Keeneland Turf Mile. Good luck.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you with our weekly pedigree analysis presented by our friends at Kentucky Equine Research. There are a number of prominent late sires represented in juvenile races this opening weekend at Keeneland, including a few represented in the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity, which we'll take a look at the field for here. The race offers an automatic berth into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, as well as some points toward next year's Kentucky Derby. We'll certainly be watching closely to see if any of these late sires have a few last stars in their final crops. Now, European Horse of the Year and 3-time leading sire Giant's Causeway, one of the great sons of Stormcat, died during the 2018 breeding season. His final crop, now 2-year-olds, numbers just 3 registered foals. It looks like he already has a good one from that trio in Classic Causeway. You'll watch him here breaking his maiden with authority on debut at Saratoga. He earned a 90 buyer, a terrific figure for a debut juvenile. He'll go in the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity on Saturday at Keeneland, looking for that notoriety. For you other pedigree buffs out there, Giant's Causeway's other final crop foals are Giant Game, who was 3rd on debut at Churchill Downs in September. We'll look for him in Kentucky this fall as well. and Manada, who was sent to the UAE as a yearling and is not yet started. This is a storyline we'll be following for sure through the fall and the Breeders' Cup as these juveniles develop, as Classic Causeway makes his bid this weekend. Several others looking to win their way into the Breeders' Cup in major preps up and down the coast this weekend. And for one of them, we'll get you over to the studio for a look at the Grade 1 Joe Hirsch Turf Classic at Belmont.
Hi everyone, David Aragona here with Craig Milkowski, and we are taking a look at Saturday's Grade 1 Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, one of 3 graded stakes that'll be run on that Saturday card at Belmont Park. This one's going 1.5 miles on the Widener turf course, and we've got the top 2 finishers coming out of the Sword Dancer from Saratoga, Gufo and the European shipper Japan. They finished just a neck apart that day. Gufo, as we throw up the field for this race, is the 8-5 morning line favorite, and he's definitely the horse to beat, but Craig, I don't think Gufo has some major edge over this field. It's still a pretty competitive bunch.
Yeah, it is for sure. It didn't draw the strongest quality of field, but it's certainly a field that's competitive, as I think there's about four of the horses who could win in here for sure, maybe 5. So good, solid field, and I think the pace projector is going to have something to say about this as well.
Well, let's go right to that time form US pace projector to see how these horses are going to sort themselves out in the front end. And no surprise to see the number 6 Channel Maker shown on the early lead here. Craig, there's no blue flag denoting a favors honor near the lead situation. I'm not sure if we necessarily use those very often in 1.5 mile races, but Channel Maker, he does look like the lone speed on paper.
Yeah, this is a case where we don't use that blue flag in these long races just because the percentages say not enough horses actually go wire to wire in these races. But he is a horse who looks like he's going to be clear. The pace projector shows cross border tucked in behind him. But he's a horse, if you scroll through his PPs, he is more of that tracker kind, and he's even dropped back pretty far off the pace at times. So for once, I think it looks like Channel Maker is going to be all alone up front.
Yeah, and it's no surprise to see that number 3 Gufo all the way towards the back of the pack. He is a deep closer who often is at the mercy of the pace. He might not get a lot of it here, so we'll see if Joel Rosario can keep him a little bit closer to the pace. Something that he did pretty well last time in the Sword Dancer, and let's take a look at that Grade 1 event from Saratoga where Gufo just got the best of Japan. There was a lot made of the trips in this race, Craig, as Ryan Moore saved more ground on Japan and got caught in a little bit of traffic in mid-stretch as Gufo got the jump on him. It did get close at the end, and maybe that bit of trouble right here did cost Japan the race.
Yeah, I think it did. It was a cagey ride on Gufo. He seemed to know who his competition was and just kind of pinned in Japan for just that shortest amount of time, made him lose his momentum. But no doubt he was flying at the end. So I think the margin at the finish is pretty representative of the abilities of these 2 horses because, as you said, despite that trouble, Japan did save a lot more ground, but he also had that break. Gufo was able to start his run a little bit early and run in unimpeded. So between these 2, I would say it could definitely come down to trips again.
And what do you make of these time form USPPs on Gufo, Craig? Because for a turf marathoner, he's got a lot of red pace figures scattered through his recent running lines, and it feels very unlikely he's going to get anything resembling a fast pace in this race with just nobody signed on to really press Channel Maker. So do you have any doubts about whether Gufo can be as effective if he doesn't get that fast pace ahead of him?
I do, because he struggled a little bit in his first few starts when he tried better graded company, and he's just been a beneficiary of some nice pace setups. He has improved since blinkers have went on. He hasn't dropped so far out of it, so maybe that's been part of it. He's been able to stay a bit closer to the pace, but the total lack of pace in this case does scare me a little bit.
Let's also take a look at the recent PPs of the number 7 Japan, who was that narrow second to Gufo in the Sword Dancer. And one of the things I love about the time form US PPs with these European shippers is some really detailed write-ups of the races in England, Ireland, and France. You get a good perspective of how these horses were doing coming into the race and what kind of trips that they had. And you could see that Japan backed up the 124 time form rating that he had gotten in his prior race, winning a Group 3 at Leopardstown. And like we were saying, he might have been best last time in the Sword Dancer. I do think that Ryan Moore got some unnecessary flack because he did the right thing for much of the race, saving ground on the turns, and just got a little bit unlucky in the stretch, not able to angle out at the time that he really intended to. But Japan ran well there, and Aidan O'Brien has been very dangerous with his European shippers, especially this year. It feels like he's brought over some really live runners in 2021, and Japan just seems like another one of those, that he's going to have no trouble handling the 1.5 mile distance. Let's take a look, though, at that likely early leader, the number 6 Channel Maker, because he is the defending champion in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. And in 2020, he did the exact same thing that we expect him to do in 2021. He went to the front end, set the pace, and this time nobody was able to catch him, Craig.
Yeah, he finally was sent to the lead a few times last year, and he produced his best season ever. I know we had both talked about that a few times where we wish they just let him run. And when he was able to do that, he ran some really nice races. Now, this year, it hasn't been as good a fortune for him. He's been involved in some wicked fast paces. He chased Channel Cat a couple starts back. Last time out, he got into a duel with Tribhuvan, another very fast horse who's won some graded stakes this year. So this just looks like a much easier spot than me. So I really think he's got a big shot, given that there's just no other speed.
Yeah, he was running some gigantic time formula speed figures at the end of last year. You can see at the bottom of the screen, he got a 129 in the Breeders' Cup Turf. I believe he had gotten a pair of 128s in his 2 Grade 1 triumphs prior to that in the Sword Dancer and the Turf Classic of 2020. Like Craig was saying, he hasn't been quite the same horse this year. Maybe it's just taken him a while to get back into form since that overseas trip, but I do think there is something to that assertion that the pace might have really worked against him in his last 2 starts, particularly last time when you see that 166 first quarter pace rating. That's just way too fast going 1.5 miles. And you do sometimes see those very large pace figures in marathon races because there's a greater variance in the pace. But you could just see it visually watching the early portion of that Sword Dancer. He and Tribhuvan really ran off on the front end, so it's no surprise that he didn't have the same sprint finish that Gufo and Japan possessed. I think the Channel Maker is going to run better here. I just didn't quite trust him maybe as much as you did, Craig, and I wanted to go looking in a different direction. So I was looking more towards the number 2 Arklow. And let's take a look at his last race at Kentucky Downs in the Calumet Turf Cup, where he did have some real trouble in upper stretch. And as they make the turn for home, you're going to see it happen right here. Florent Giroux is trying to send him through between horses, and the hole is going to close up right about here. He's going to have to steady, really pull back on the reins, alter him, come around the field, and the winner, Imperador, just gets the jump on him. And Arklow almost gets him at the finish of this race, but getting your momentum stopped in early stretch in one of these turf races where you're sprinting to the wire, that's pretty costly, Craig.
Yeah, I was actually the beneficiary of this trip. As on the forecast, I think that was a week you were off. I picked Imperador, but I freely admit that he was not the best horse that day. Arklow was. He got the best trip. The problem for me with Arklow is he was in not very good form before those couple races. I can understand picking him off that race, but as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the matron on a different video, I just tend to ignore those Kentucky Downs races because it's just such a different track. And I'm wondering if he can reproduce that form over Belmont. Obviously, Belmont's a very big turf course, but it's still not the same with the rolling hills and the just different ground. So I'm going to go against Arklow in here, but I can see why you would. He was definitely best last time out.
Yeah, Craig, as we've talked on our podcast a lot, you know that I've never been the biggest fan of Arklow. I've often knocked him in races, picked against him when he's short prices. But watching his last 3 races, it just feels like he's gotten poor trips 3 times in a row now. And sometimes riders just kind of fall out of sync with horses that they're too familiar with. And I wonder if Florent Giroux has just gotten a little too familiar with Arklow. He's tried to get him to move a little early in his recent races, and it hasn't worked out now 3 times in a row. He obviously clipped heels 3 back in that United Nations in Monmouth. That it was kind of amazing that Florent Giroux stayed in the irons that day. He lost all chance in that race when that happened. 2 back in that race at Del Mar. Trying to make a 6-wide move around the far turn is not going to work over a turf course like Del Mar. So I think that was the reason Arklow didn't run well that day. And I just think his form is a little bit dirtied up. And he actually is another defending champion in this race because he won the Turf Classic, the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, I should say, back in 2019. So he definitely has prior form over Belmont Park. And he's getting a rider switch to Jose Lezcano. And Jose sometimes is a rider that will change things up a little bit, make a horse be a bit more forwardly placed, even if the running lines prior to this might not say that they're supposed to be. So I'm hoping that Jose Lezcano can get Arclo a bit more involved early. And let's throw up our picks for this race. I think you know who we're going with based on our comments. I'm taking Arclo in this race. He is 6-1 in the morning line. I'd hope to get a price around that because, like I said, he's a horse that doesn't have the best form coming in. His form is a little bit inferior to horses like Gufo and Japan, but I do think he's got a chance to bounce back if Jose Lezcano can work out a better trip. Craig, you're going with the speed of Channel Maker.
Yeah, and it's basically the same story. He doesn't have the same form as the top two in this field, doesn't quite have the speed figures, but he has the back speed figures. He has a pace edge. So, and he's going to be a decent price in this field. So that's a reason I sided with him.
Pace and trips are going to be of utmost importance in this Grade 1 Joe Hirsch Turf Classic on Saturday. Thanks for watching and good luck if you're playing this upcoming weekend.
Here's the field, and a very competitive field for the First Lady Stakes. It's a Grade 1 for fillies and mares going a mile on the turf. $400,000 is the purse. And I guess you have the top middle distance filly and mare turf horse in the country in the 3 Altique. She's only raced twice in North America this year, but who could ask for anything more? A win in the Just a Game, a win in the Diana.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that too, Dan. I mean, I guess she is the leader of this division right now. 2 really nice wins in her only 2 stateside appearances. You know, they're both Grade 1s. She beat the same horse both times. Her stablemate, Summer Romance, who was on the lead in those 2 races. Altica ran her down both times. She's obviously good. We'll see what kind of price she is. I don't know that she has a huge edge over this field, but maybe she does.
Let's throw up the Timeform US pace projector. Timeform US believes that Blowout might be able to get to the lead, and I won't be surprised at all if that's the case. Blowout's best race earlier this year at Churchill Downs came when she just ran out to a lonely lead. No one went with her, and she held on. But this pace could get fast if the 11 Delica wakes up on the wrong side of the stall and decides she wants to start pulling again.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see. I do think Blowout is going to go to the lead in here. I'm not going to argue that point. I do think there's also a chance, though, that maybe she doesn't get loose this time.
Abscond is the number 1 going out for trainer Eddie Keneally. She is a really honest filly. I'm a huge fan of hers. I liked her in the Nassau 2 starts back. She came with a run. She just couldn't get to Jolie Olympica. I liked her in the ladies' turf last time out. She stayed on okay behind Princess Grace and Dalika. She's really honest. As you see by the pace projector, she has tactical speed. I'm just not sure she's a Grade 1 filly, even though she won the Natalma at 2.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. Her last couple of races actually are both pretty good. Even her Distaff Turf Mile, when she was, close to Blowout at the end, wasn't a bad performance, Dan. She's got something to prove, I guess, in this kind of a race at the top level of this division. It's interesting because the only time they really tried her in that Grade 1 since she won as a 2-year-old is in the Just a Game at Belmont. When you go back and watch that race, I mean, I looked at it and was just like, why did they even enter? It felt like they didn't even try to win that race with her.
It was a very strange ride. I actually gave her a long shot chance in that race because I thought maybe they'd make the lead with her. And the next thing you know, she was rated back to last and really didn't have much run. Empress Josephine is your horse lacking pace data. Why? She's a foreign invader making her first start in North America for trainer Aidan O'Brien. And she won the prestigious Irish 1,000 guineas earlier this year at this distance. Now, she's faced older fillies and mares twice. One in the Nassau Stakes. I'll throw that race out. 1.25 miles too far for her. Last time out in the Matron, it was kind of an even 4th, and I thought she was 4th best.
Yeah, she probably was. I didn't think she ran poorly last time. I don't know if it's the kind of race that, I would want a better back out of, but I thought she ran fine in that race. That was a good field. She stayed on pretty well to the end, I thought. Her 1,000 guineas win earlier in the year, she was pretty good in that race, Dan. Very game to just get up on the wire there. I liked that performance from her. I do think there's some upside here.
Let's watch Altica's win in the Diana, making it 2 for 2 in North America and 3 wins from her last 4 starts. She got a very nice trip and ride from Manny Franco, was able to save some ground despite breaking from the far outside post. The pace was solid, got to the outside, and she just seems to have Summer Romance's number, doesn't she?
She does. A good finish, though. You could see her really accelerate there, the final 1/8 of a mile to overtake that pace setter. She wins it pretty handily at the end. This is a good performance. I felt like maybe there were just some horses behind her that day, Dan, that didn't show up with their best performances. I don't know what that says about Altica, though. Her 2 races since she got over, they're both good.
Stepping up in class is the 4-star Command for the great Shug McGahee. This one's won 3 out of her last 4 and just has the look of a typical McGahee-trained horse, getting better with maturity and maybe a little bit more distance. She won at 7 in this race at Kentucky Downs last time out at 2 other than. She was odds-on dropping out of the De La Rose. She worked this trip out, Mike, where she was in behind horses. She gets to the outside. She grinds them down. This distance might have been a little short for her.
It might have been. This is an okay performance against some weaker competition. But I like the way that you put it when you were introducing her, Dan. She's a typical McGahee Phipps production here. She is getting better with every start. She's obviously much improved from 3 to 4.
Coming up next is one of Mike's favorite horses in training, the 5 Hendy Woods. Very underrated for trainer Mark Cassie. Let's go back to her last race. It was the One Dreamer. Cassie found a great spot for her at Kentucky Downs in this restricted race, coming off the heels of a close second behind Regal Glory in the De La Rose. And as you see, she's traveling very comfortably, turning into the long straight. And once she makes the front, it is all over.
Yeah, I mean, she dominated this field, but it was also, as you said, a great spot that they found for her. She ran well in the De La Rose. That was a good performance, although Regal Glory, it felt like, was probably a lot better than she was that day. But listen, they found the right spot for her here. She took another step forward, winning a race over Sweet Melania and Alta's Award, Dan. That's not the same thing as it is against Face in a field like this.
And as for Regal Glory, she's won 3 of her last 4. Let's watch her victory over Hendy Woods in the De La Rose at Saratoga. You see her on the far outside, and what's notable about this race is there was not a lot of pace up front. Hendy Woods, who's sitting in second right now, gets the jump on Regal Glory, turning into the stretch. For a brief instant, it looked like Regal Glory was in trouble, but just look at her motor home. She kicks home like a car.
Yeah, you can't come home faster than this. The pace was slow. She still had work to do at the top of the stretch. She flew the last 1/8 of a mile there, final quarter, 22 and change. Really impressive performance, Dan. As you mentioned, 3 of her last 4 wins. I would say, go back and watch the Just a Game too. I'm not suggesting she was going to win that race. She got very unlucky there, bumped at the start to wind up last.
Daddy is a Legend loves Keeneland. 3 for 5 over this turf course. She is 2 for 15 everywhere else. And we talk about it all the time. She's been very unlucky in several races that she probably could have won. Now, at the age of 6, I wonder if she's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but she was in a very tough 4-star Dave last time out. The Just a Game was a pretty good race to be 3rd behind Altica. George Weaver's done a very nice job with her.
He really has. I like that she's, that they brought her back at 6 so she can still sort of perform at the top level, Dan. Her last 2 performances are fine. I don't think they're going to get it done in this race, especially when you go back to that Just a Game, because she got a great trip in there and actually came clear ahead of Altica in the stretch there. Had a real shot at that race, and she just wasn't good enough.
Harvey's Little Goyle enjoyed Keeneland last year. She won the Queen Elizabeth II Cup against fellow 3-year-old fillies, and then she came back with a giant effort, beaten only a neck in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. I was very excited to see what we were going to get from her 4-year-old campaign. She won the Beaugay in workmanlike fashion, and since then I think you can question her form. In the Diana, the race we saw with Althika, though, she was in a 3-wide trip all the way around the track, never got cover, and she finished decently. And then in the personal ends, and listen, she's in against Latruska, and she actually tried to win the race.
Yeah, I get what they were doing last time by going back to the main track. She has main track form, so it made sense for them to try that with her. It didn't work out. They're back to turf now. I'm with you on her Diana, Dan. I don't think she had a terrible trip, but she was outside the entire way. Listen, it's not like Altica saved a ton of ground either, but she saved more ground than this horse did. And I don't think she ran as poorly as it looked. She's a real dangerous horse in here.
Blowout earlier in her career was always the bridesmaid. Second by a nose, second by a neck, second by a neck, second by 3/4. And then she got the win in the Distaff Turf Mile when Flavian Pratt said, listen, we're just going to go. And no one went with her. And she opened up 8 and she held on. They ran her in the 4-star Dave. That pace was a lot faster.
It was. And she actually ran fine in there to only beaten a couple of lengths. Then she's a real nice horse. I can't say that I've always been her biggest fan, but she's good. And I think they are going to put her right on the lead again on Saturday and see what happens. She's a real threat to wire this field, I think.
And remember, she missed time after that Distaff Turf Mile with an issue. She might have been a little short in that race. She has never been off the board against fellow fillies and mares. Princess Grace, what can you say? All this Caracanti filly does is win. Let's watch the ladies' turf at Kentucky Downs last time out. She has now won 6 of 7 starts. Her only loss came when she finished second. The trip certainly worked out here. Look at the split she gets at the quarter pole. She didn't break very well, but she got herself gradually into the race, Mike, and she finishes it off to defeat Dalika and Abscond. Now she gets a step up in class into a grade 1, but she's already won 4 graded stakes this year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a nice little test for her, though. I think they are stepping her up into probably the toughest race of her career now to see where she fits, and she deserves the chance. All she does is show up and run good races, as you mentioned. And there she did ultimately get a really nice trip, but she did break slowly from the gate and was last early. I thought it was another nice performance for a filly who keeps improving.
Doesn't matter whether it's 5.5 furlongs or 1 3/8 on firm turf or soft. Dalika seems to show up more often than not. She is a very temperamental filly at times. She will pull and go to the lead. It was nice in that ladies' turf we just saw where Princess Grace won that she was able to relax a little bit. Maybe cutting back from the 1.5 miles to the mile did something there, and she finished it up. I look at her starts at Keeneland, however. She was 4th in the First Lady last year. It was an okay performance, but I wonder if maybe this is not her favorite turf course.
Yeah, I guess that could be something to that. We'll see. She's another one who I think, maybe deserves the chance in here. I liked them cutting her back last time. And I'm with you. I like the fact that she seemed a little bit more settled in that race. I think it's also worth pointing out, Dan, that, while Princess Grace just sat along the inside and saved all the ground, this filly was very wide all the way around the turn in there, and was still staying on at the end. I think she ran an underrated race last time.
La Signare is very, very honest, the number 12, but as a few of these, like the Absconds, I'm just not sure if she's a true grade 1, and she came close in Southern California in the Gamely. She ran okay when 3rd behind Althika. She sat the pocket. She got in a little traffic, and then she couldn't finish with Althika. And last time out in the Flower Bowl, they tried something new. I don't blame them. They tried to stretch her out, and that's the only way they were going to beat Warlike Goddess, by trying to bottom out the field. It didn't work out.
Exactly. They took their best shot in there on the stretch out, put her back on the lead, which is a running style that she had success with earlier in her career. They tried it again in the Flower Bowl. It didn't work out. They'll cut her back for this. I mean, she's a fine horse, and I'm sure she's going to show up and give a good account of herself, Dan, but I don't like betting her in races like this.
This is a lousy post position for the 13 Viadera, but I can't argue with anyone who says that 8-1 is a great price on this mare. Winner of the Matriarch in impressive fashion in her final start as a 4-year-old. It took her a long time to get back to the races. The De La Rose was a race where she did not have a good trip, and then she got back to the winner's circle with this race, the Ballston Spa, last time out, where Joel Rosario kept her relatively close, got Viadera to the outside, and she has to work in this race to win it, but she does get up, and the 4th place finisher would come back to win by open lengths in the Violet at Monmouth with a 105 buyer. I think she's racing herself back into shape for Chad.
Yeah, I do too. I think she's a player in this race as well, if she can get a trip from post 13, Dan. I like this performance for her. I know it's only by a nose, but she was holding on there to the end. After keeping closer to the pace than she usually does. And you're right about her De La Rose. She had a pretty tough trip that day.
Top pick time for the grade 1 First Lady. We can go so many different ways. I think you might be onto something. I think I made a mistake in not rating Regal Glory higher because we saw her fly home to win that race last time out at Saratoga. You give her pace, she's going to kick.
Yeah, we'll see if the race sets up for her. I don't think she needs to be that far away, Dan. We'll see if she gets the right trip in this race, though. I've always felt like she was a little underrated, and I'm glad Chad's given her a chance to run in some of these bigger races this year.
Harvey's little Goyle likes Keeneland. She has tactical speed, and I'm hoping she's not off form. I think the dirt race can be forgiven. I think the wide trip 2 starts back is a little bit better than it looks on paper. I want to give her one more chance. I know on her best day she can run with these horses. 8-3-2-9 for me, 6-3-8-5 for Mike. It's the grade 1 First Lady on a really, really hot card at Keeneland on Saturday. Good luck.